Come peer with us through the looking glass at the evolution of one Joseph Albino Thunderbuns. Joe was living the good life with a happy family, accomplished career, and good friends. That was until it all came to a grinding halt. While his devastated body was wasting away from COVID, his yearning mind was racing to find a cure. In a moment between moments, his consciousness was pulled from his body into a state between space, time, and quantum singularity. When he returned to his body, universal truths had been revealed for the first time, and Joe knew now what his true destiny would be, and it involved reaching out to the crack pack to expand the collective human perspective regarding life as we know it, and to amplify the good vibe waves that he would be producing for the rest of his life, for CG and for all humanity.
You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take.
Plan. I'm the enemy, because I like to think.
You can travel like a Bobby doll. You can hang out like a biker's mom. You fit in anywhere you go. Bring your own style just to steal the show. You shine so well when I'm slowing you stare. Drink with a light, you drink your smoke on your bed. Love by all yourself, you know. You're always involved, you're the star of the show.
Welcome to another episode of Fultonland Live. I'm here this morning solo. It's good to see you, Dave Brink, Genuine Comics, B. Rose, Black Rose Comics. Thanks for joining this morning. I had kind of a crazy start to the day after, there's good stuff. Back at ya. Thanks for joining. Had kind of a crazy morning. Hey, we've got LCH 33. People are rolling in. I love it. Had kind of a tough morning after kind of a tough day. Lots of craziness around here. We're going through what so many families are going through and have been going through the last couple of years, where we try to have kind of a normal summertime routine for the kids and for our own sanity as parents. Good afternoon, Statistical Zero. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. I was saying that we're trying to have a quote unquote normal summertime routine for our kids and for our own sake, myself and the Lady Fulton. And excuse me while I silence this alert. Don't want to interrupting the show. So we're kind of have our summertime routine down, and then I get the black tar heroin version of COVID combined with double pneumonia. And so, of course, that throws our entire life into a tizzy. And I get sent off to the hospital, and then Lady Fulton has to try and manage the castle solo. I get out of the hospital a week later, and now there's a whole new craziness, to family life. And we just start getting that all settled over, the last few weeks. And we're trying to get the kids ready for their normal school time routine. And all summer, since the last day of school last year, we'd been told that school would be starting, basically Monday of this week, a few days ago. And, excuse me, still got this persistent cough, as they say, souvenir from COVID. That and coughing up foamy phlegm. Those are the souvenirs that COVID leaves. So anyway, we had just gotten ourselves, the whole family, into the state, I guess you would say, where we're ready for the kids to go back to school. We've kind of got them prepared after all the craziness of the summer. And then Sunday night, we find out that school will not be starting the next day, which was a few days ago. It will be pushed out 2 weeks. And it struck me, my immediate reaction was to be frustrated with the school administration. And then the next moment, I realized it's not the administration's quote unquote fault that they did this. They're working with a whole lot of very confusing information coming down from on high: California state government, county board of health, federal government, all of this stuff. And they are unfortunately left with the responsibility to try and sort through all of that stuff, whether it's factual information, counterfactual information, partially factual information, and try to figure out what are the most responsible measures to take when it comes to the students, parents, their own staff, the interface between them and the county board of health, and them and the California state government, state board of education, county, blah, 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 blah. And it occurred to me that them having to deal with that sort of mess, that fog, let's say, of information, misinformation combined, it occurred to me that those of us who are in independent publishing, whether we're self-publishers or we have companies that are established like Ethan Van Sciver, John Malin, etc., or somebody like myself who has been doing freelance work for the last few years. That's how I broke in to working in comics professionally. And then now, as of 2020, I officially launched Outlier Comics, and I've been growing my publishing company, mostly behind the scenes, partially in public, not wanting to mislead anyone with where the company is going or what we're doing or what our production schedule is. And yet, all of this craziness over the summer happens, and I realize there may be a fog of misinformation or misunderstanding or miscommunication or whatever, due to circumstances beyond all of our control, which would leave people kind of wondering, well, what's going on with Outliers? What's the state of the union, so to speak? So I wanted to take today, because I've been working behind the scenes every day, trying to touch base with all the production team members and see how they're doing, both with the project and with everything else going on in their lives. And it turns out that while I was down for the count, some of our team members had some health stuff going on too, and then some family stuff. And then one of our guys, I'm only going to say this because it said publicly what it was. Ink Spots, our color wizard, went toe to toe with the IRS, and unlike the song "I Fought the Law and the Law Won," Ink Spots is such a stud that he fought the IRS and Ink Spots won. So very, very happy for him. He was facing some unjust accusations, let's say, and he handled his business like a pro. And at the end of the day, the good guy won. So I just wanted to touch base with everybody and let you guys know where we stand as a company and where the project, the Outliers Volume 1, stands, and give you guys some updates. It's all good news as far as I can tell. From my perspective, it's nothing but good stuff. I hope Good Stuff Comics Gator likes that. And then, so from here on out, I hope that everybody will be able to get a good understanding of where we're at. And I'll continue to provide updates in other venues as well. The Outlier Comics mail list is going to get an overhaul. And the reason why I thought I would be posting updates before I got sick and didn't was that there were some things going on, mostly outside of my control, that I felt were more urgent to deal with. And it's not that it was more important than sending out updates to the mail list. It's basically all important when you're in publishing and you're dealing with some behind the scenes stuff. But there are some things that are more urgent than others, and that just changes on a day-to-day basis. It's like if anybody who has run a small business, or if you've worked in big business and you've managed teams of people, even if you've worked in small business and you've managed a team of, let's say, 3, you just find that day to day there's stuff where you look at the priority list and everything is equally important, but you have to rank things according to urgency. Otherwise, you never get anything done. So that's where we were at. That's why the mail list has never gotten an upgrade, basically, since I created it. And it's also why there haven't been updates going through the mail list to up to the time I got sick. And then obviously once I got COVID and pneumonia and all that, it was just kind of out of my hands at that point. But I want to say that the mail list is getting an upgrade, an overhaul, if you will, in its presentation, and it's also going to be getting some very cool updates on. We'll see how you guys respond, if you want weekly updates, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever it is. I think when you see the updates themselves, I think you'll be happy with what you see. I've got things kind of tuned in now behind the scenes to where our updates are cool to look at, even if the information presented doesn't really float your boat. Like if you say, okay, well, that's cool, but it's not really something I'm excited about. Like business is happening as usual. Great, cool. That's nice to know, but it's not blowing my skirt up or anything like that. At least you'll have some cool stuff to look at when you get the update. So with all that said, I want to get into the chat here and rub elbows with the elites, the customers. And as soon as I can get my setup figured out here. So people might be wondering why I'm covered in beer. And if that's you, I just want to say, before I greet everybody, that it's because I've been living life on easy mode since recovering from COVID, and everything is awesome essentially every day. And not to say that there aren't still challenges in life, because there certainly are, but my perspective has been changed to the point where it's quite how I approach things, how I'm looking at things, and how I'm handling the everyday challenges of life is quite different from what it used to be. So, for example, today, had a bit of a tough morning as far as the kids were concerned, had a bit of a tough day yesterday, but at the end of it, it's, in my opinion, it's all good. And so today I had a bunch of updates to give you guys with the Outliers and some other stuff that's related to the Outliers. And I was sitting there looking at it going, this is all good news. This is the kind of day where I would normally want to be throwing a party. Now, I'd love to be toasting each and every one of you with a tall, frosty beer, but it's not only too early in the morning for that, as I'm not a morning drinker. But at the same time, I'm also on my way back from having the worst category of COVID that's currently on medical record, from what the docs tell me, along with pneumonia in both lungs. And so I don't get to enjoy any of Grandpa's cough syrup again until the doctors tell me I can. So even though my recovery has been, not only phenomenal for myself and the family, and not only is it fit in the category from medical science as quote unquote impossible, and they've had to say that so many times that they've just stopped saying it. But at the same time, I feel like I got a party. So I got to wait for the doc to say it's okay to enjoy the frosty beverages that I know and love. Until then, I'm going to go with the next best thing. So I call this ensemble beer. Let's get into the chat. Let's see who's with us this morning. I know I've said hi to some of you, but I'd like to say hi to all of you if that's possible. So I'm going to scroll through real quick from the beginning. Dave Brink was number 1 today. You get the no prize for being number 1. And I said hi to B Rose and Good Stuff and LCH33. Let's scroll down. Said hi to Stato. And there's Eric the Guapo. There's Matt Fowler. There's Eric Hutfuls. Master of the Horse reporting in. Thank you, sir. I was very happy when I returned to the castle to see that the stables were just as clean as ever. The horses were just as happy as they've ever been. Wonderful job, sir. I salute you. Who else do we have? Abro Ideas is in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Robert Shepard. Back at ya. Alan Hale, otherwise known as the Skipper on Gilligan's Island. Right back at ya. Arisaga Brian is in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Red Boar Comics and Games is working, so he won't be chatting. I admire that. What else? What else? Who do we have? RT Bear. RT Bear, living legend of the comic book world. Decades in the mainstream. Maybe getting close to a decade in the indies from his 90s independent stuff, the 80s independent stuff that he started working on, and then you combine those two, and then you add in the Comicsgate experience and the work he's done in the last, how many years now, Art? 3 years? A little over 3? Anyway, he's been around a long time. He's done a lot of stuff. The guy's a living legend, and I am humbly grateful and honored to say that I'm also his co-writer on his current project, Black and White Volume 2. And so thank you, Eric, for putting that link in the chat. Appreciate you. If you guys haven't checked out the campaign, I recommend it. I can tell you, being a backer of the first volume and really enjoying it a lot, and then being a co-writer on the second, I've described it as, I forget exactly how I described Volume 1, but it was something like, if Volume 1 was a volcano, then Volume 2 is a supernova. The scale of the action, the drama, it gets crazy real fast. We start off kind of picking up the pieces from where Volume 1 left off. We pay off the setups there. And then we just start kind of ramping it up. And then there's a point where the story just explodes into craziness. But it's linear, so you can follow along, with what's happening. If you like action adventure, if you like the idea of kind of a James Bond type of world set in a future tech environment, kind of super spy stuff, that's Black and White. We've got Derek, otherwise known as Dirk, in the chat. Good to see you, my friend. Amanda B., Senior Counselor in Chief to Fultonland. Here's a toast to you with the magic cup. Glad to see you. Who else is here with us today? Art says, Joe, putting out the fires. That's right. Turns out in publishing, they never stop. So you just got to be on it with the old fire extinguisher. Sometime, maybe if you guys are interested, I'll tell you how I got the name, the nickname. One of many. I would say probably the first that was bestowed upon me that I truly felt humbled and honored to receive. It was Fireman Joe, and I was in 8th grade, 14 years old. We were done with the school year. It was a summertime party. I can't remember if it was a school's out party or high school's coming up party, but either way, it was a great one. And let's just say there were copious amounts of soda and water consumed by yours truly. And then all of that liquid had to go somewhere. And there were some people who were lighting fires on the property where the party was at. And there was no garden hose available. So Fireman Joe stepped into action. Shadowhawk, good to see you. It's always good seeing you show up. Art, of course, you get a black and white shout out. We're partners on this one. I'd shout out any project you were working on, but if I'm involved, you better believe it. It's getting some love on this show. Stato has stopped questioning what I'm wearing. That's probably a good idea. We don't want anyone's brains to break around here. Dave from Genuine Comics says, I never wonder why Joe's covered in beer. I take it as a default setting. You and me both. Even if it doesn't show up, that's just kind of how I roll. That's how I think of life these days. Booty Juice, Dan Dahl says, does your new lease on life include day drinking? Only water. This Miss Magic Cup is filled with water. It's water and it's organic whole milk. I was on a very clean, quote unquote, diet before getting sick, before COVID, pneumonia, and all that. But these days, it's so finely tuned. It's really it's incredible fuel for healing. And so I eat only good tasting food, but it's all like whole food as much as possible, organic as much as possible. If organic can't be obtained, then non-GMO is an acceptable kind of second alternative. Beyond that, it's mostly if it's not whole food, then it's minimally processed, so like no high heat stuff. I haven't been able to eat deep fried stuff in like 6 years, sadly, because I love me some fish and chips, among many other things like chicken fried steak and gravy. And I should just stop there. I'll go on all day. But anyway, yeah, no day drinking unless it's water. With meals, maybe some organic whole milk. But water is the big one. It really helped keep my whole system flushed out while I was dealing with COVID and pneumonia. And it also, fun fact, will either help prevent kidney stones or will prevent kidney stones. So for all these CG people who are dealing with kidney stones the last year, you up that water intake to about a gallon or more a day. You talk to your doctor, and don't be surprised if those kidney stones go bye-bye and don't come back. The whole reason I started drinking a gallon of water a day back when I was 18 or 19, is because I had a friend's mom who would have kidney stones so bad she'd have to get them surgically removed, and she'd be in the hospital at least twice a year getting that done. And I said, homie, don't play that. I'm going to start drinking more water. Yes, Critical Blast is here. RJ, I literally have beer goggles on right now. That's why I say everything looks great to me. I'm living life on easy mode. No matter how bad it looks without the beer goggles, when these babies are on, it all looks good. No problems. Magic water, that's right. Sorry for the occasional persistent cough. As I said, that's a souvenir left over from COVID. The docs tell me it'll take some time to get rid of. Kind of like the memory fog or the memory holes that COVID patients have when they're trying to get through it. And then the weird thing is that after you're done with it and they declare you, COVID cured, COVID immune, you still have this residual, I don't even know what you call it, condition maybe, where your brain has to just gradually get back any of the memory loss that you had. And sometimes there's a memory fuzziness, and that clears up over time. And I'm happy to say that every day I get a little more back. But that and the cough are the things that they tell me could take months to fully get over. Coleman says he drinks 4 liters a day. My man! I'm guessing there's no kidney stones in your future. RJ says, you'll be living in front of the urinal 24/7, but you won't have stones. That's a fact, Jack. I do have to go bleed the old thunder weasel frequently. However, I will say that over the years, I also put my bladder through an elite training program of expansion and contraction such that it can basically hold gallons if it needs to. And then all I do is turn on the old fire hose when there's appropriate facilities, including the nearest bush, and then, just let her rip. And that sucker is cleaned out faster than you can say boogaloo, and then ready to go for the next gallon. Peyton Holden, good morning to you, sir. Let's just check your wrench status, shall we? Let me bring this up. I know we've discussed this topic before. I just want to see. Oh, look at that. Peyton Holden doesn't have a wrench. Well, let's see what we can do about that. Add moderator. And now, Peyton, you have been wrenched. And here, within the sovereign kingdom of Fultonland, free and independent, comprised of sovereign citizens, everyone that lives in the castle has some duty of office. There are those who don't live in the castle that have a duty of office, but we're all free sovereign citizens. I may be the king of Fultonland. That's only because I started the channel. Citizen King is who I am. When it's time to dig a moat, I'm there digging alongside everyone else. When it's time to fertilize them fields, I'm out there spreading that bull pucky along with everybody else. So, Peyton, as a sign of your office and in thanks to your service to the kingdom, being my favorite troll that follows me around all over different platforms on the internet, what title would you like to reflect the service that you have given to the Kingdom of Fultonland, the sovereign citizens here in the chat with you, and how would you like to be known from here on out? We can have something like Senior Troll in Chief, or something else if you like. If you want to think about it, feel free. When you're ready to be officially dubbed with your new title, let me know. And as far as the wrench goes, around here, we like to have a good time. We don't like it when someone shows up who's trying to take away everyone else's good time by spamming the chat or by trying to bring in some baggage that they've got going on other channels or other parts of the internet and trying to drag that in here and then throw it up all over other people in the chat. That's the one thing that we will not abide. And to quote Michael Bancroft in his golden rule, it's to have fun. So we don't tolerate people taking away other people's fun. If it's unintentional, no sweat, we'll clear it up. But other than that, it's pretty much Senior Good-Natured Troll in Chief. Excellent. That is a fantastic title. We're going to put that up on the screen. I'm going to screenshot that and remind me to update my list. There we go. Perfect. I now dub thee, Peyton Holden, Senior Good-Natured Troll in Chief. I thank you for your services to the realm and encourage you to go forth and rock on with your bad self. Now, we have someone else here. D-Geek Art, what's my office in the castle, or am I not yet acknowledged by the sovereignty? Well, D-Geek Art, I'm in a bit of a pickle as far as your status in the kingdom. And the reason for that is I don't normally wrench creators. Now, Russ Leach, my co-host, who's not here today because he's off having fun with his family, doing family stuff, although he might pop in before the show's over. We'll see how it goes. But he's out doing dad stuff and having a great time, I'm sure. So, Russ, if you hear this, if you're watching, if you're listening, wherever you're at, we miss you, mate, but we're glad that you're having a hopefully an enjoyable day off. So where Russ is concerned, I had to make an exception for him, partly because he's the co-host of the show, but more specifically because he's the Samurai General of Fultonland. And so when I, as the Citizen King, am out doing my duties, hosting the show, sometimes I'm not able to see snakes in the grass, let's say, that are trying to approach the boundaries of the kingdom. And if there's snakes in the grass that need to be taken care of, then sometimes they get in, they make their way all the way into the castle, and then I need a samurai general who can take care of those snakes that get into the castle. However, the other wrenches, as to the best of my knowledge, best of my memory, that is improving every day, the creators who are unwrenched, it's only because around here we really focus on the fact that there is no rank in Fultonland, and that everybody's role is valued equally, regardless of how different it is from anyone else's role. So it's the citizens who are not creators who get wrenched and who voluntarily take on the responsibility of keeping those snakes in the grass that are trying to get into the kingdom, keeping them down to a bare minimum, but then also the day-to-day duties of just taking care of whatever is happening in the kingdom that people in the castle might not be aware of. So things like posting links, things like answering questions from other people in the chat, all that kind of stuff. Now, D-Geek Art, otherwise known as Elizabeth, Outlier Comics graphic designer, here's the deal. I'd be happy to rent you, but if you ever come out with your own book, we'll have to have a discussion about whether or not you keep the wrench. And that has nothing to do with you personally. Personally, I'd be happy to rent you and not lose a wink of sleep over it. But the thing is, I try to be as consistent as possible with any of the so-called rules, which are really just we all agree to the same sort of thing voluntarily. Anyway, so I've, after careful consideration, I've decided that I'm spending too much time on this topic, and I'm just going to go ahead and wrench you. Because as far as I know, you've never created a book on your own that you published, and then everybody said, "Oh yeah, she's a creator." So I don't believe there's going to be any rumblings and grumblings, and I think that you are well qualified to moderate this channel as well as others. So there you go. And let's see where you have your title. Let me get down. Okay, here we go. So D-Geek Art, aka Elizabeth, graphic designer for Outlier Comics. I hereby dub thee official mom and hander outer of timeouts on Art T Bear's channel, and anything else you think is helpful on Fultonland. Go forth and rock on with your bad self. And thank you for your service to the kingdom. Yeah, Rick Saylor knows the golden rule. Have fun. That's right. I'm just catching up with the chat. Eris Saga is a knight of Crackpack. No argument here. And Eric Hutfuls, thank you for putting up the link to Brian's upcoming project, Dwarfs vs. Lion. I'm on Team Dwarf personally, not the least of which, but I have many reasons for my alliance with the Dwarfs, but not the least of which because we have a dwarf on the Outliers team. His name is Marty, aka Mini Mart, and today you guys will see for the first time Mini Mart in glorious color. And Ink Spots is working on Terrence Hightower, aka High T. I was hoping to have that for you this morning, but that hopefully will be ready next week, along with, I hope, another one that's coming up. So I'd like to be able to show you guys two characters next week that have had their color testing done and colors are locked in. So we'll see Mini Mart in all his color later on in the show. D-Geek says, I can be an unwrenched creator to the sovereignty. Too late, you're wrenched. Stato says, I don't mind not being wrenched. Plenty of awesome mods in here, and the works get gummed up when there are too many. I agree. One thing that I have seen is when there are a bunch of mods and they are all dropping links to the point where it's really difficult to have a conversation flowing in the chat, which is one of my favorite parts about being in the chat of any particular show. And I've noticed that other people seem to feel the same way. So I don't ever want to get to the point where it feels like there are too many mods at any given time. At the same time, I don't want to be in a position where people in the chat are wishing that there were mods and, hey, can you wrench a few people so we can blah, 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 blah. So you guys just let me know. If you think it's getting to be too many, let me know. If you think there's not enough, let me know. I'll be happy to oblige either way. David Feed, Mr. Red Eyes himself, says there's no racial bigotry around Fultonland. He's not looked down on. Well, here we are all equally worthless. Yes, including myself. You've hit the nail on the head. Oh, B. Rose says the Weebs will storm the castle eventually. B. Rose. Oh, ye of too much faith. Let's see. Shadowhawk is Team Lion. Brian Aerith Saga says Team I can't legally say. He's not allowed to choose favorites between the dwarfs and the lion because he's responsible for both of them. It's like he's both sides coach and team manager and owner. We don't want any conflicts of interest. Oh, B. Rose says there's 7 weebs in the chat already. Well, you say that, although who's to say I wasn't already aware of that? The more you know. Isn't that the little tagline from that cheesy commercial we used to see here in the States on NBC? The star and the rainbow flying across the sky. I borrow ideas. That is an excellent guess. He's asking if Mini Mart, the man with dwarfism on the Outliers team, is based on Tom Thumb. He's not based on Tom Thumb, although I do have the Squadron Supreme maxi series in collected format on my shelf behind me, and I do like the character of Tom Thumb. He actually is based more, believe it or not. It's not apparent in Volume 1, but it'll become more apparent in, I think, Volume 2 and definitely Volume 3 of the Outliers in the introductory story arc. He's more based on a combination of personality characteristics and then a little bit inspired by the physical appearance of an actor, believe it or not. His name is Marty Klebba, and the name Marty is where I got the inspiration for the nickname or the superhero identity name of Mini Mart. But anyway, Marty Klebba is the guy who played in the Pirates of the Caribbean films, and I think he had the most screen time in the first one. The pirate who was bald, Caucasian, and had dwarfism. And he was paired up at times with the guy. The actor's name is Lee Ehrenberg. He had a skullet. He was bald on top and then had long hair on the sides and the back. And he's the guy that went up to what's her name, Elizabeth, Keira Knightley, and he goes, "Hello, Poppet." So the pirate who was bald and really short was sometimes paired up with that guy in the movie. So, okay, so Eric Huffles remembers him. Okay, so that actor was on a show that I used to watch called Little People, Big World, and I would watch it because I was doing research. I was trying to learn about dwarfism for writing research. And I had no idea that the family that was featured on the show were friends with this actor, Marty Klebba. And so I saw him as himself, not as his character that he played in Pirates of the Caribbean. And let's just say there were certain things that I found were admirable. And I thought, man, how cool would it be to have a fictional character who has some of this guy's traits, more or less has the type of dwarfism that he's got, and then add in some other stuff. I just started getting all kinds of ideas. So anyway, I just kind of filed it away. And then when it was time to produce the Outliers team, and come up with a good mix of personalities and power sets and visual aesthetics and all that, I knew he was going to be in there just from the very beginning. And so he was one of the foundational characters, along with the Saint and High T, that I sort of built the team around and then expanded outward from there for other characters. Let's see. Yeah, Johnny Rando says Marty the one man party. Yeah, he really is in the series. You'll see this is a guy who loves life. He absolutely loves being a superhero. He can't get enough of it. And as a matter of fact, in volume 1, in chapter 1, he's a little I'll say insecure about not being able to use his powers, which when he consumes sugar, his body metabolizes it and converts it into the energy he needs to move at super speed and for his mind to work at super speed and process information accordingly. So he's kind of insecure about being without the switch, I guess you would say, to just flip on his power at will. So he actually is wearing this backpack full of junk food that he's got loaded up. So he's constantly making sure his energy level is always topped off. And that backpack will come back to haunt him in chapter 1. And we'll see that he's decided to go a different route in chapter 2. And that's just an example of how these characters will learn and grow as a result of things happening to them in each chapter. So in chapter 1, Mini Mart thinks he's big man on campus because he's got this backpack loaded up with junk food that just keeps him at basically super speed all the time. And he finds out that backpack becomes a liability and a pretty serious one. So he learns from that. And in chapter 2, which happens 30 days in story time after the events of chapter 1, we see that he's learned from it, he's adjusted, and now he's more well-equipped, let's say, more efficient. So he's, in other words, he's quote-unquote getting better at learning how to be a superhero. And all the characters go through that. Either they get better or they get worse. And who it is and how and all that is one of the things that we'll figure out together as we read the book. I don't know what Tenno Heika Bonsai means, but welcome, Oz Great Sage. Good to have you. Comics du Nord says, what's the new project about, Joe? I am glad you asked. Let's go. I think we're all caught up. So let's get into that, shall we? Let me just get a drink of Magic Cup Magic Water here. By the way, Comics du Nord, Chael Roberts. Excuse me. Glad you could join us. Appreciate it. So let's bring up something on the screen that I said I would show you guys, which is some new artwork. And we'll take a look. There it is. We'll take a look at Mini Mart in Technicolor, and then we will talk about the new project, and we'll talk about the scheduling and the updates and all that good stuff, and we'll go from there. Okay. Now I just gotta find it. Chrome tab. Okay. There we go. So, this is how Mini Mart will appear in Chapter 1. And so basically, Chael, the Outliers is a superhero universe. I should say the Outlier universe is a fully realized, fully immersive universe that is inspired by the kind of the all-time classic stories of Bronze Age Marvel and DC. So if you imagine the types of characters and storylines that were coming out of Marvel and DC in the 70s and 80s, that is the single biggest inspiration for the Outlier universe. Now, within that, what we find is basically an alternate version of Earth, okay, that has been hit by this cosmic event that nobody. Yeah, exactly. Chell says he's a small guy like Puck. Yeah, exactly. He's got dwarfism, so he is much shorter and stockier than the average person. But he's also because he, like I said, he loves life. He tries to maximize opportunities for fun and good times whenever possible. And so one of the things about him is he realized early on that if he was in peak physical condition for him, just as anybody else can be in peak physical condition for them, whatever state they're in life, then he could do a lot more of the stuff that he wanted to do and that people said he couldn't do because he was too short or because he had some side effect of his dwarfism that people thought that he couldn't do this or that. So he got into sports and weightlifting at an early age and essentially built himself up into like a peak physical specimen for his whatever was in his capacity to do so at the time. And so he was that guy before he got superpowers. And so then after this cosmic event, which I'll get into in just a minute, happened, and he was one of the people who started exhibiting powers, which in his case was super speed, both physically and mentally. So he can process information faster than the normal person by magnitudes of efficiency and speed. One of his limitations with that is that he still has a human perspective on things. So he can only detect information, that's within his ability to do so. For example, he may be able to process, nearly infinite amounts of data at any one time, but he can only detect a limited amount based on the fact that he's got human eyeballs and he has to look around with his head on a human neck and that sort of a thing. So it's not like he's all knowing or anything like that. But when he's moving, whether he's just looking around still, but his power is active because his body has produced that sort of energy. He can look around and then process things extraordinarily quickly. And then when he's moving at super speed, that's how he doesn't crash into stuff. Now in the beginning he did a lot of crashing, and that's actually why he put the helmet on, because he knocked himself out more than once trying to figure out how to use his powers. So when he joins the team, he shows up, basically he puts this helmet on and then he zooms off and does whatever he does, and he gets made fun of. He used to get picked on by the other team members, especially High T. Those two have a very antagonistic relationship, but it's quickly, as we'll see, it quickly develops into a very strong friendship. And those guys, they basically become brothers in arms, you might say, as a result of their experiences fighting bad guys. But anyway, so in his first kind of iteration as a superhero, in Volume 1, we see the Outliers team, the 5 of them, plus a 6th kind of pseudo member, Agent Maria Santos, who's their government liaison, both with the government groups that sponsor the team, the Outliers, and equip them with what they need. But then also she's their liaison with the public. So in the beginning, the Outliers team is very protected, let's say, by the government, and it's more so they're kind of like cordoned off from the rest of the public because superpowers are still new when we open up in Volume 1, and the government is very, very leery about groups of people coming together with their superpowers and doing stuff that no quote unquote mere mortal could possibly do. When you get a bunch of superhumans together, there's no way to predict what the outcome might be. So the government basically decided they were going to be the first ones to try to identify who the superhuman people were now in this new world that they were all living in, and see if they couldn't more or less put together the first super teams or super groups as both a protective measure for the safety and security of the United States, but then also And the team doesn't know this yet, although one of the team is starting to get some suspicions, and you'll find that out when you read chapter 1, that not everything is quite as it appears, and that there's some shady stuff going on. And so as the introductory story arc unfolds, and people read, the different things that are going on with characters and with the Outliers as a government sponsored super team, they're going to find out that there's a whole lot going on within that government component than any of the Outliers were ever told or would have ever been aware of when they agreed to join the team. So, anyway, basically what the Outliers are, the team of 5 plus Agent Santos, they are basically the first super team that gets put together in the world that the U.S. government is aware of, let's say. Because we find out in chapter 2 that there are other teams out there of superhuman people, and they're not necessarily considered good guys. And who they work for is a mystery in chapter 2, which is part of volume 1. Volume 1 will be 48 pages of main story. Chapter 1 is 24 pages. Chapter 2 is 24 pages. And that's how all 12 chapters in the arc are structured. So after we publish and fulfill all of the pre-orders for the graphic novels through crowdfunding, then we're going to get into the single issue market on newsprint. And each chapter will be printed with a coloring style. If you notice, the left-hand figure here of Marty is colored with flat colors, and so is the right hand, the front and back view. And then the center view, where he's got his high sugar mega gulp soda here, this has some rendering on it, some lighting, some shading, some blending. Now, this coloring style in the middle, that's what's going on the premium paper for the graphic novel. The flat color style is what we're going to do with the newsprint floppy issues. Because with newsprint, if you try and get too tricky with the coloring, it just all comes out bleeding into each other, and it looks muddy. It doesn't look good. So Inkspots and I have kind of co-created a new coloring style for comics for premium paper, where it's sort of like the flat style from the old days, like the 70s and 80s and previous to that. It's like that flat style here, but then it's upgraded a bit, but not so much that it becomes special effects heavy and it looks like something that was just rolled off the press yesterday. The idea is that it's kind of like a bridge in between the old newsprint comics and then the stuff that we're producing today that is special effects heavy. So hopefully the Outliers will fit perfectly in between your old comics and your new ones, with the Outliers kind of being there in the middle. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Thunderbuns is sounding more thunderous these days. Thank you, Telepathic Bunny Comics. Yeah, the recovery from COVID has been going phenomenally well and phenomenally fast. To give you an idea, the doctors, when they were about to let me go from the hospital, said they expected me to be in there a minimum of 2 to 3 months and probably up to 6 months, just because of the severity that I had with my condition. And all the different people that were in the same category as I was, that's more or less the people who actually recovered did so after minimum 2-3 months in the hospital, but most of them around 6 months. And they told me there was even a guy in there at the same time as me who unfortunately had to be intubated. They had to stick a tube up his nose and then run it down his lungs. And he'd been in there. He had a less severe case than I did, from what I was told, but he had been in there for 9 months and they didn't know if he would recover or not. And then unfortunately, when you're on that floor of the hospital where I was at, what they told me is you either vegetate for months and then you recover, or you don't recover and they wheel you out to the morgue. So, for me, they basically made it very clear that they were so just stumped at everything I was doing, from my recovery to the rate of recovery, how it kept accelerating. The fact that they cut me loose after a week, they thought would have been virtually impossible. Well, they said it would have been more or less just not even, they wouldn't have even thought of it. Inconceivable, I guess, to quote the dude from Princess Bride. So, to your point about me sounding better, it's continued since I've been home, and it's actually sped up. So, they told me that COVID took me down to about 1% left of life before I flipped the script and started my recovery. And the time it took to go from 1% to 5% back was a week. And when I was at 5%, they let me loose because they needed the bed for somebody who was worse off than me. So, like 4% of life or less. That's who they needed to clear the bed for. So they cut me loose when I was about 5%, back to what I call baseline, my physical state before getting sick. And then in the weeks that I've been home, I've gone from 5% to now I'd say I'm slightly more than 25% recovered, as far as building my body back up, because it completely destroys your body depending on the severity you have. If you have a mild to moderate case, then it'll destroy your body to a mild to moderate degree. If you have a severe case, you can do the math. So, I'm just building everything back up. My muscle tone turned to jello in 1 week in a hospital bed, not just because of normal atrophy that happens, but because that's one of the things that COVID will do if you got a bad enough case of it. So building back muscle density, muscle strength, cardiovascular health is great, improving daily. I'm working out and actually just took on a new workout challenge yesterday, which I'm excited to share with people when the time is right, because I think that when they hear the story that inspired me and got me involved with it, I think it'll be very inspirational to them as well. But anyway, sorry for the tangent. Thanks for the good vibes. I do appreciate it very much. D Geek says, based on the quick speed at which he travels, has he broken a lot of helmets as he got used to maintaining his speed and controlling it better? I wouldn't say he broke a lot, but he has broken a couple. And in chapter 1 of the first book, we're going to see his helmet that you see there is going to get punished quite a bit. And he's going to decide he needs a costume upgrade. And we will see that in chapter 2. Arisaga says he better not be a spy for Lion and giving him some secrets from the dwarfs on weapon and armor loadouts. You'll have to read to find out. Telepathic Bunny Comic says, I also have a government that bans superheroism that they don't control. Those governments, you got to keep an eye out, keep an ear open. Never know what they're going to get up to if we're not on their case. Matt Fowler says, Inks is the man. Yes, he certainly is. Eric says, Joe is building back better. That is absolutely true. 100% correct. Better, bigger, faster, stronger. Just like the $6 million man. Pixel Trader says, beer goggles? Yes, sir. I am not able to drink alcohol yet. I'm still a ways out from that, building my body back up from COVID. But I just had so much good news to share that I felt like throwing a party. So I got my some of my party clothes on, my beer goggles, my beer shirt, my shiny gold bucket hat, and I guess you could say I'm throwing an update party. I'm updating people on where the Outliers is at. It's all good news, and so that's what we're doing today. Pixel Trader says Comicsgate is a hack group. Indeed. As we were dubbed by some wackadoo on Twitter, saying that Comicsgate is a hack group, we all said, yes, we are. Thank you for acknowledging it. And now we're going to wear hats more often. It's just like when we were initially slapped with the Comicsgate label, across our faces without permission, I might add. That really got my goat for a little bit. And then I realized, along with a bunch of others, all right, you want to play it that way? Fine. We'll wear the label, and then we'll get up under your grill and make you read it and acknowledge it every single day until you get sick of it. And then we're not going away. We're just going to keep wearing it. And then when we decide we're done with it, then maybe we'll take it off. Yeah, Dirk says hats versus creeping baldness. Hats for the win. Telepathic Bunny says let the hat flow through you. Okay, so back to the Outliers updates. It seems like some people like what they see here with the colors. I'm just going to give you a kind of a review of what the Saint, our flagship character, looks like in living color, and then we'll take a look at Misperception. The Saint is the leader of the team, the field leader, and we'll see as the series goes on that he is more than qualified not only to lead this particular team, but others as well. And so let me get him on the screen, and we'll do a quick review. Okay, so there's the Saint. Legal name, David Santos. He's a former Green Beret who was, among other things, he specialized as a combat medic and basically a solo sniper. Often snipers work in pairs. They work in teams. There's a sniper and what is often called a spotter. There's other names for it, but basically you have a pair where one person is calling distance and wind and all of that stuff, other factors that can affect the shot, and then the sniper is the one who's actually dialing in the scope and pulling the trigger. And David Santos was what was called a solo sniper, meaning he could be dropped in basically anywhere as a result of his Green Beret training and experience and navigational skills. And he could infiltrate enemy territory and then essentially carry out whatever mission objectives were given to him, which often included taking out key targets, key leadership targets, in order to topple an enemy stronghold, whether that's a physical stronghold or a socio-political one or whatever. So he spent a whole lot of time in the desert overseas doing his Green Beret work, and he eventually became something of a specialist at counter sniping, snipers who were taking out the good guys. And in a kind of a twist of events, he was trying to take out an enemy sniper. So he was trying to counter snipe him, and the bad guy flipped the script and counter sniped David. And what happens from there, we'll see in a backup story to the main story. So we have 48 pages of main story in Volume 1, and then we have 8 pages of backup story for a total of 56 pages of story content. And that 8-page backup story will tell part of the origin of the Saint. It'll show what happened when David was shot and what triggered the onset of his superpowers. And then it kind of sets up the next little bit of his origin story, which is after his powers were activated, what happened next. So I'm hoping that the campaign will do well enough that we can add in one, maybe even 2 more 8-page backup stories that would tell the first part of the origin of Misperception, and then a third character that readers would vote on. So maybe it would be Night Falcon, maybe it would be High Tea, maybe it would be Mini Mart. The readers would decide, but that those other 2 backup stories would only be included if we could reach certain stretch goals in our funding. So anyway, there's the Saint. Basically, he's kind of like a living. There's an electronic component in the real world called a transducer that basically absorbs energy of one form, converts it to another, and then that converted energy can be used for some other purpose. And so he's kind of like a human transducer in the fact that he can absorb all forms of known energy and convert them into other forms of energy that he can use for his own purposes. So as long as he's conscious, he has a protective energy field around him at all times that allow him to do all kinds of superhuman things. Have a good one, Stato. Thanks for joining. Hope you have a great day. And I'd like to welcome Pumps back to the show, and Jason Black, and Bristolian Dave, and anybody else who's joined. Thank you guys for joining. Appreciate you. So essentially, when it comes to powers and relative strengths and capabilities, the Saint is sort of like the Superman of the Outliers universe in the beginning. So what that means is that, relatively speaking, he seems to be a lot more powerful than his teammates. He can do things that they're not able to do, so on and so forth. As the story goes on, readers will find out that every single character with superpowers has untapped potential. And part of the goal of the 12-part story arc is to show how they all have untapped potential that they're slowly beginning to figure out that they can do more than what they were told they could do by so-called experts. And the Saint is one of those, and so is everybody else on the Outliers team. So let's go to Miss Perception. We'll do a quick review of her because some people haven't seen these characters before. This is their first time. So here she is. She's inspired by many different sources, I guess you could say. I always knew from when I first started building out the universe that I was going to have a female character who is kind of like DC's Power Girl, in the sense that she's like a combination of idealized femininity from, her stature, her physical appearance, but then also she would be somebody who, in the beginning, people really underestimate what she can do based on her powers, which are... oh, and by the way, notice that she's a ginger, and she will always stay a ginger. There will be no color swapping or ethnicity swapping or any of that other nonsense for the sake of saying, oh, look, now I've got somebody who's more brown. There will be none of that going on. A ginger she is, a ginger she always has been, a ginger she always will be. Chael, you're mistaken, my friend. He says, when the SJWs get a hold of this property, she'll be changed. They will never get a hold of this property. I have plans for, and we see he's kidding. I have plans for setting up Outlier Comics such that, and I've already started working on this, however long that I am able to run Outlier Comics, it will always be a privately held company. It will never go public. It will never answer to stockholders. It will never be under the thumb of another corporation. And I've got things planned out so that as soon as it's legally viable, I'm going to be setting up a trust with the best attorneys that I can afford. And when I do this, believe me, I'll be able to afford some very, very fine, well-qualified attorneys who are going to help me to draft all the legal documents that I need to be able to establish Outlier Comics as being held in trust. And a few years before I think it's my time to move on and retire, which would be when I would be very, very old, if I have my say about it. Essentially what would happen is that anybody who I trained up to replace me would kind of be like executors of the trust, in the sense that they're the ones running the company, but they'll be held to a set of accountability standards which make it almost functionally impossible for them to mess things up too bad, because if they start to mess things up, then mechanisms will kick in that they'll be replaced. And so it's a sort of thing where it's either going to be run how readers want the company run, or it's going to get dissolved. And it'll be set up in a way that however big the company can get built up between the partnership of readers, my team members who work on helping me produce the books, and myself, however big it gets, then it's either going to continue to be run however it got there, or it's going to get dissolved. And then at worst, readers will have some sort of legacy of superhero storytelling that they can always count on, that they can always look at and refer back to and pass on to their kids and their grandkids. So that's more or less how it's going to be for Outlier Comics. Back to her power set. She has the ability to create illusions, in the sense that she doesn't create illusions that everybody objectively can perceive. It's almost like she's a cross between. It's almost like a cross between a psychic, like Charles Xavier, and an illusionist, like the character Mastermind from the Dark Phoenix saga and the run-up to the Dark Phoenix saga, Jason Wingard. So the way that her powers work is that she has an innate sense that she does not understand and may never understand, but she's able to kind of get a feel for what sort of illusions a person will believe as being real. And then she can craft those illusions to essentially maximize the chances that this person really buys into it and doesn't even consider the possibility it might not be real. They just act as though it's real. And so when she creates an illusion, what we've done is I've developed an effect. I've developed it with Russ Leach in the line work and with ink spots in the color work, where we, the reader, will see this kind of aura around any illusion that she casts. That's a good comparison. Mr. Von Stugel says Professor X and Mysterio. Yeah, kind of like a cross between Professor X and Mysterio, except that she doesn't have the telepathic skills or the degree of power that Professor X has. It's more like a very, very, very low-level telepath, maybe even an empath might be more precise, combined with the ability to create illusions. And she does it within her. The illusions are generated from within her. There's no tech involved, so it's 100% her. But I think that's a pretty good high-level comparison, Professor X and Mysterio. David's Feet says she sounds like Envoy from Full Metal Alchemist. I haven't seen it or read it, so I couldn't comment. But yeah, if that's who she reminds you of, then cool. Let's see. Past Master Dan says her roots are a little dark. I'm thinking she dyes her hair. That is a good guess, but she is a natural redhead. The curtains match the drapes. Although we're an all ages publisher, so I'm not going to get any more into it than that. But the reason that her hair looks like that is because we wanted to show the effects of lighting on different organic and inorganic materials, even in the newsprint issues where we use flat colors. So we've basically got in these side illustrations of her, these figure illustrations, we show that light is, creating this, red effect here with her hair, but then right at the crown of her head, and then also down. If this was bigger, I could show you. But then also towards the ends of her hair where there's more shading there, it's because light is not lighting up those parts of her hair. So yeah, she is a natural redhead. I'm going to take a drink and then we can continue. Pardon the glugging. and the random coughing. Excuse me. So basically, what she does is she'll create an illusion, and then she'll make that illusion visible to whoever she wants it to be visible to. So in chapter 1, and I've showed artwork from this, there are some scenes where we see trees in a forest in the Northwoods of Maine, but then we also see some trees that are illusionary. And that those trees have that aura around them. And that's because she's casting the illusion to the what people call the werebear, which I've shown before and I'll be showing again in the future. Oh, perfect timing, Eric. Eric the Guapo says, I like that power set. It will be very interesting interactions. Are the illusions tangible? So the way that the illusions work is that, for example, in chapter 1, she and the rest of the team are trying to peacefully, if possible, bring in a superhuman that has been identified by their government handlers as someone that is in the country illegally in the United States. This happens to be he pops up in Maine when the government becomes aware of him, and they need to assess him to see, why is he here in the country, what are his capabilities with this superhuman stuff, and is he a threat or can he be an asset? So the Outliers are sent to go basically try to talk him into coming back with them so that he can get debriefed by the U.S. government. And because of this guy's history, he has no interest and actually has a severe aversion to governments of any type. So he doesn't want to go, which means he takes off to try to evade them because he doesn't want to hurt anybody. But at the same time, he's not going to allow himself to be captured willingly. So he takes off running, and one of the first things we see is misperception creates an illusion up ahead of where he's running to of a whole bunch of trees. And she does that because she sees where he's running. She knows he's trying to get to a clearing. And so she essentially puts up this barrier that is nothing but illusion. But to him, to the werebear, it's completely real. So as far as he understands, it's tangible, okay? But when he jumps up into the air to try to land on, because he's superhuman, so he can just from standing or running just jump and then land up in the tree branches, which are quite high up. He finds as he tries to grab onto this branch that he just passes right through it. So once he comes into contact with the illusion, he understands that it's not tangible, but he doesn't understand what's going on. To him, it's a real tree that he's passing through it, and his brain just kind of goes into a momentary stunned silence as it's trying to figure out what's going on. And we see in the page that he's just shocked as he's passing through this illusory tree branch. To his mind, before he actually came into contact, that thing was a real tree. There was no question that it wasn't. So I hope that's a good explanation there. Oh, Danger Vanessa showed up with a werebear countdown. Do you guys want to see the werebear in action? It's been a while since I showed him off. We don't have colors yet for that section of the book, but I do have line art. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 are fully penciled and inked. So I'm very happy to say that all the line art is done for the main story, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. And we're powering through the color tests for the different characters. And as soon as the color tests are done, then InkSpots will be coloring pages. I think we got a yes in the chat. All right. What is it that Witten and Captain Chokeout say? All it takes is one. All right. We'll bring up the werebear. So let me stop sharing and then get to the right screen. And I will bring up those pages for you guys. People want to see high tea? Really? Okay, I guess we can do that too. We got a couple requests here from Telepathic Bunny. I think I saw somebody else. ask for high tea. So, all right, we'll bring out the werebear and we'll bring out high tea. In the meantime, let's see if we can get a word from our sponsor. Oh, I don't have it loaded. Look at that. That'll have to be next week then. I think you guys will get a kick out of it. Got a little commercial ready for you. Next week, though. Next week. So I'm going to... Oh, Past Master Dan. These are not cupcakes. These are beer steins. Beer and bubbles. And a little foam on the top. So yeah, I'm throwing a party today, but I'm not yet physically allowed by the docks to drink a tall cold one. So I'm just going with the next best thing. Well, Pastor Master, if you think they're beer flavored cupcakes or any other flavor of cupcakes, by all means, rock on with your bad self. I don't mind. I say they're beer goggles because that's what I was told when I bought them. So there. Okay, let's get that line art that you guys wanted. Got to go back into a different folder. Comic Projects, Outliers, Volume 1, Chapter 1, Inked Pages. Now I got to try and remember. Oh, yeah. This is a nice little sequence. Matter of fact, I can show you the sequence where our friend the werebear tries to jump for the tree branch and then sails through it, much to his chagrin. And then I can show you high tea and the saint getting rocked by the werebear. Let me just make sure there are no spoilers in here real quick. Oh yeah, with one page I can even show you a couple other things I was talking about. This is good. See, I knew this would be a good day. You know why? Because from my perspective, every day is a good day these days. Okay, let's get you guys the goods, shall we? Come back to share screen. Let's see. Get that comment up on the screen and share screen. Excuse me. Okay, I don't think it'll work for the Chrome tab. Yep, we got to share the window. Okay, so here we have page 4, and in the background here in panel 1, there's the saint. And if it looks like he's standing still, that's only because we've got Mini Mart zooming past him. And the previous pages, it gives you the context here, but we're not going to go through the whole book. In the interest of time, we got to kind of keep this short and sweet because I'm going to have to close the show down here in a few minutes. I can feel my vocal cords in my lungs saying, "Wrap it up, buddy. Time to rest." So here we've got Mini Mart, and he's got his backpack full of his junk food, which is his fuel. Remember, he's a little insecure about not having a full tank, as it were, all the time. So he comes rushing in here, of course. This is the team's first mission, and even though they've been training together, it's a first mission. There's stuff that's going to go wrong, just like on any mission. But a first mission, don't be surprised if more goes wrong than what you expect. So he's got a tranquilizer dart here. What they're trying to do is, as our friend is running away, they're trying to tranquilize him because they've been briefed that he's got superhuman strength and agility and so on. and they don't want to have to hurt him in order to subdue him. So they're trying to actually be as kind as possible. First, they tried to talk him in. He took off running, so now they're going with option 2. So they're going to try and trank him. So Mini Mart comes zooming in before anybody can say anything. A little over enthusiastic, jumps on the back of this dude here, who's trying to make a run for it. Now, remember what I said about the backpack being a liability? Well, he just wants to get this guy off of his back. It just so happens he grabs the backpack and then throws Mini Mart against a tree. And if we go to the next page... Okay. Then he's jumping up into what he thinks is a tree, but is one of Misperception's illusions. So here's where he's starting to say, what is going on here? He went up to grab it, but his body just passes through it. So now, as he's falling, we've got Night Falcon down here, who's kind of like a cross between Iron Man and Batman. He has no superhuman powers, but he has resources that allow him to create this powered suit. And so he's on the team for multiple reasons, but one of which is what he can do with this suit. It gives him the ability to do superhuman things. So he qualifies as an outlier, both in the team sense and in the overall general sense of the world, where people who exhibit superhuman powers get classified as outliers because they are so far outside of the statistical average for humanity that they're in their own category. So rather than being a statistical normie, they are superhuman. They're set apart. They're distinct. So in the Outlier universe, we don't have mutants. We don't have metahumans. We have outliers. And then the government, because it's not very creative at all, when it assembled its first superhuman team, it decided to call them the Outliers because they wanted to establish like this is the gold standard type of a thing, which will be explored in later on in the series. So here we've got this guy come crashing through the tree. Night Falcon has been stalking him, tracking him, and is ready for him when he comes crashing to the ground. Meanwhile, Terrence Hightower, also known as High T, is checking on Mini Mart. You might notice here that his helmet is busted from hitting the tree. So Hightower is checking on Mini Mart, see if he's okay, see if he's even still alive after what he just witnessed, getting slammed into a tree like that. And now here comes our friend. He's passed through the tree. And it just so happens that the Saint had flown around and was ready for him and gives him the old haymaker. And now this guy busts through what is a real tree. So I'm going to check in with the chat, see what you guys are saying. Kate SSS says, please leave Eric's dumb comment up for the next 20 minutes, Joe. Thank you. You're welcome. Can do. Although, now that we're showing art, maybe I should probably take it off the screen. I don't think it'll cover up the art, but I can't see both at the same time, so just to play it safe. So the Saint cleans this guy's clock. He busts through a real tree branch, hits the ground, and now we've got someone walking over to where our boy has landed. And he's right in the vicinity of Night Falcon here, who, remember, was tracking his trajectory. And it turns out that as Night Falcon approaches, our boy's not knocked out. He's not helpless. Night Falcon tries to stomp on him to make sure he stays down. And our guy just casually grabs him by the ankle and flips him over. Now, it turns out that the guy who was walking toward those two was Terrence Hightower, who now, as we see, is transforming into High T, which he can do at will as long as he has enough energy to do it. It takes a whole lot of energy to make this transformation and to maintain it. So it's always a temporary thing with him unless there's essentially an endless energy source that he can tap into. Hint, hint. If he does, it will be him relying on someone else. All these characters have limitations, and they all play into whatever mission they're on, whatever adventure they find themselves into. They're always having to deal with limitations. There's not going to be any sort of power creep as we have heard it described, where Superman gets some new power, so then Marvel decides the Hulk needs to be stronger, so he gives him more power. There's none of that. People have unlimited potential in this universe, but they always have limitations. So if we look down in panel 2, our guy, the Werebear, is getting up. Night Falcon's on his back, saying, what just happened? And now we see that there's a little something going on here with our friend the Werebear. He's growing bigger in response to High T getting bigger. Because this guy has assessed that the threat is now much worse than what he thought, and there's no way he's going back with them or anyone else. So now we get a little homage here in the final panel 4. Little homage to an old TV series you might have watched. When this gets colored, you may say, that kind of reminds me of the old Incredible Hulk series. And then we see him go through a transformation of his own. And as you can see, High T and Night Falcon are saying, what just happened here? Because it turns out that our friend the Werebear has got a whole lot of something that those guys don't have. And there's a whole lot of extra mass and power that go along with it. Let's catch up with the chat. Brian with Arisaga is saying, dude, these are awesome. Glad you like it, man. There's a whole lot more coming up. Not today necessarily, but got all kinds of good stuff planned for you guys. And it all builds off of the foundation that we lay in chapter 1 of volume 1. Everything is very strategically and purposely built. So we lay the foundation for certain things in the very beginning when you first open the book, and then everything builds up off of that. And the goal is that by the time you guys, if you choose to read, if you choose to back every volume, then you'll get the entire introduction to the Outliers universe, to the point where it feels like if I've done my job correctly, and I spent literally years building this out before I ever said anything to anyone about it. If I've done my job correctly, you will feel like you're in the type of superhero universe that so many of us grew up with as kids, whether it was the Marvel universe, the DC universe. If I've done my job correctly, you'll feel like at the end of the 12-part story, which I don't know how many volumes it's going to be. It depends on how much you guys want to back in a volume. The first one is 48 pages, 2 chapters. I'll go into some other time. I'll go into how I broke it down. It's kind of a sad story, but also I think it's got a happy ending to it. It has to do with certain creators back in 2018 making big promises and then failing to deliver. And I wanted to be the type of creator who undersells and over-delivers. I'll put it that way. So we start out with 2 chapters plus backup story, possibly up to 2 to 3 backup stories, depending on how much you guys like the campaign and you want to support the book and how much money we can raise. So kind of getting back to where we were at in the story here with the pages, I'll bring it back up as soon as I can find the window again. I've got too many things open. Yeah, Chill, you're not kidding. Those were the dark times. Right around the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, when some of us started realizing we were being taken for a ride by some of these so-called professionals. Anyway, those days are long past. Happy times are here again. They've been for a long time. So we get back into the story, and we realize that our friend the werebear here has a whole lot more he's bringing to the table than what these guys thought. And suddenly, High T's no longer the big dog of the yard. So he comes charging in thinking he's all that because he knows what he can do. And then he gets surprised with an opponent who apparently can do a lot more. So that's a bit of a rude awakening for High T. And he gets smacked down immediately. Goes skidding across the clearing. And Night Falcon suddenly isn't so eager to rush in again like he did before. The Saint had been in the air. He's flying back. He's observing what's going on, and he's about to descend and try to get in front of High T, because the Saint is not only a soldier, but more specifically, he's a protector. He's a defender. So he's coming down to get in front of a fallen comrade, and he's basically saying, "Here, enough. You proved your point. Let's chill. Let's talk." And this is the werebear's answer to that, because he's had enough of this crew who won't leave him alone and is trying to take him against his will, against his God-given free will, to make him do something he doesn't want to do. And this is the response. And believe me when I say the Saint is no slouch. So anyone that can do this to him is got some serious game, let's say. So I'm going to end it there. I hope you guys enjoyed that. There's a whole lot more to it, I'm happy to say. Chapter 1, excuse me. Chapter 1, like I said, is 24 pages. Chapter 2 is another 24 pages. You get those back-to-back in Volume 1. And then you'll get the 8-page backup story that tells the beginning of the Saint's origin story. And if we raise enough funding, we'll get a couple more origin stories in there for you. Misperception, and then a third one as to be determined by readers. You guys will get to vote. And if you want High T or Minimart or Night Falcon or Agent Santos, or even if you want the werebear, we can do that too. The stories are all there. They're done. They're all planned. The only question is, what do you guys want? And that's how the whole series is going to be. Is after book 1 is out, then I'm going to start asking questions on a regular basis of what you guys want to see for book 2 and book 3. And you guys, if you're interested and you want to help shape the Outlier universe, and you want to help determine which stories get told first and which characters we find out more about, which characters we find less about, it's all up to you guys. So really, it's a collaborative effort, not just me and the production team, but all of us with all of you, anybody who's interested and wants to buy the book. So I'm very, very happy to be in the position that we're in, and working with all of you guys as our creative partners. I just can't even tell you how happy I am. So let's kind of finish up with the production updates, and then we'll call it a day. We've got a new, because I got knocked out with COVID for a couple months, and then it's taken time to slowly build up to reestablishing my previous workflow and my previous workload. Excuse me. Telepathic Bunny Comics. Why not write all the stories and make them add-ons? It has to do with scheduling, quite frankly. COVID knocked me out for enough time that, in addition to some of the other team members having to deal with personal stuff, some health conditions, some just dealing with other things that kind of came in out of nowhere, we've basically used up so much of the lead times that I built into the schedule. Every major milestone in my project schedule has a minimum of a month padded onto it as lead time that's designed to absorb delays. so that the overall production schedule can keep rolling without any customers ever knowing that there was delays behind the scenes. Well, even with all of the months of lead time built into the schedule, we got to the point where almost all of that was absorbed. So now we're at the point where, in order to keep some sort of reasonable production schedule going, and my team members all have other projects outside of the Outliers, so I had to basically book their time in advance, knowing I'd only have it for a certain amount of time. So I've done a lot of juggling behind the scenes of different objectives so that we can keep everybody more or less rolling. But it's gotten to the point where there are some things that are now off the table due to scheduling limitations. And your question is, I'd love to do it, but it's more or less out of my hands at this point. So I have to work with the constraints that we now have before us. Yes, Alterman Schneidley, thank you for asking. I was just about to say, the new launch date for the campaign is now March 2022. And I'm also saying April. So I'm saying March, April 2022, only because with me on the mend from what COVID did to me, and pneumonia as well, I have to be realistic in, even though I'm recovering at what the doctor says an impossible rate, and I have been for many weeks now. I always have to be realistic and think, well, if there's a setback, if there's something that happens outside of my control, but it affects my health, that slows me down, I have to weigh that in and include it into the updated schedule. So the target is March, but what I'm advertising is March, April will launch. So we've got the updated launch date for the campaign. We've got the status of the line art. It's all done. Pencils, inks, it's complete for the main story. And Russ and I have it worked out so that as he's working on Only Death Can Save Us 2, he knows he's got an 8-page story to draw that we will work in with his schedule so that it's ready to go when we need it to be for the Outliers. It's actually going to be ready early. That's how I like to work, is get things done early. And then if you have problems and delays, then at worst, things arrive right on time. So all the line art is done for the main story. We've already got it figured out how to schedule in the 8-page backup. Colors, we picked up color testing again last week. We've advanced on color testing for the characters. Mini Mart's done. High T's in progress. Next week, I'll have an update. I'll have finished, as far as I understand, I'll have finished colors for High T to show you guys. And then I'll have possibly one other character finished that we can talk about and show off. And then most likely Night Falcon. And then what else? After the color tests are all complete for all the figures, we go into coloring pages, and I'll be showing you guys those as we continue. I think that's everything. So if there's no questions, then we're going to call it a day, because I need to rest my vocal cords and my lungs and eat some lunch. I'm going to give you guys, 10 seconds, 20 seconds to see if there are any questions for me before we close it down. And while doing that, I'll just put up on the screen some cupcake beer goggle banter. And it looks like there are no questions. So we're going to call it a day, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I know you could have been doing anything else, but you chose to spend it here with us, and really appreciate that. I'm going to bring up my outro here, which I hope you guys enjoy. Let's all go out and make a great day. And until next time,